All right, everybody ready to roll? We all organized now-ish? Yeah? Huh? We good? All right, Jerry, you ready? All right, let's get the rocking and the rolling. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Preble, and I'm on the Saco School Board Chair. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7 p.m. this Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would just like to please note that we have all school board members in attendance except for school board member Warnoff, who has been excused this evening, that kind of day. All right, on to item 3, approval of school board meeting minutes dated March 26th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
Chair Preble.
I heard school board member Truman.
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated March 26, 25.
Do I have a second? School board member Johnson, I see your hand.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the minutes? All right. See that there's nobody seeking recognition. Roll call vote. School board member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School board member Roach?
Yes.
School board member Kidder?
Yes.
School board member Truman?
Yes.
School board member Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, and motion passes 6-0. All right, moving on to item agenda 4, adjustments to the agenda. I did not see any adjustments to the agenda this evening. Moving on to item 5, correspondence. I also did not see any correspondence unless there's any board members seeking recognition for that. Moving on to item 6, public session. Please feel free to come before the school board and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. All right. Seeing no one from the public is seeking recognition, we can move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Superintendent Ray.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of items tonight. We're excited in the school department to partner with Pennell Printing for Special Olympic merchandise fundraiser, with all proceeds directly benefiting our students and supporting the Unified Special Olympic Games each year. This is a great way to encourage team spirit leading up to the York County Special Olympics on May 9th at Noble High School. I want to give a thank you to the Biddeford Saco Dental for visiting Fairfield School and teaching our students about proper tooth care, making healthy food choices for strong teeth, and what to expect during dental visits. So that was kind of cool. I want to thank Merrill Auditorium for hosting Fairfield and Young School students to see A Year with Frog and Toad, a story they read in class. So that was a good event for those. This summer, with the closing of JFK, we'll be moving the Welcome Center to a satellite location at Young School, and so they'll be open after July 7th, hopefully every single day, but we're still working on that because, as you know, federal funding can change from day to day. I want to remind everyone that Beetlejuice Jr. will be performed by our SMS Bobcat Players Friday the 11th at 7, Saturday the 12th at 2 in the Thornton Academy Garland Auditorium. And then, other than that, we have been pretty busy on budget stuff, and we'll get to that in a few.
All right. Any discussion or questions for Superintendent Ray? All right, moving on to item 8, Chair's Report. I just wanted to bring up an email that the board received from SMSBA, that we are having a potential gathering that all school board members across the state of Maine are encouraged to come up to the State House on Tuesday, April 22nd, to be meeting with legislators, visiting the House and Senate, and urging support for our public schools and students. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. The board members will meet at the Cross Building at 8:45 a.m. that day, and then head over to the State House from there to meet with the House Speaker Ryan Fecto, and then from there visiting the Senate and the House and be recognized there. And in the afternoon, they'll meet with Senate President Maddie Daughtry. So if we wanted to just connect and see if there was any of our board members that might want to head up there, that would be wonderful to just kind of consider if that's something we wanted to do. And there is an RSVP that we could do if we chose to do so. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention in your email, board members, so that we could kind of take a look and see if we wanted to do that. Any discussion or questions? Okay. So just check that out and let me know or let Jeremy know, and we can connect on that. All right, perfect. Seeing there's no questions from other board members, moving on to item 9, staff reports. I didn't see anything specific listed, so we can move on to item 9, which is board subcommittee meeting minutes. Policy and personnel met this past evening, and the next policy and personnel meeting will be May 14th at 5:30. The next Finance and Infrastructure Committee meeting will be held on April 30th at 4:30 p.m. And the Curriculum Committee, our next meeting will be April 28th at 4:30 p.m. Any questions from the board regarding the upcoming committee meeting minutes or any of that? All right, moving on to item 11, old business. There is none listed. So we can move right into item 12, new business. Item A, new hires. There is a memo in your packet. Do I have a motion?
Chair Preble?
School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the nomination of Sarah Rice, K2 school psychologist, and issue a contract for the 25-26 school year.
I have a first by School Board Member Truman for a motion. Is there a second? Second by School Board Member Johnston. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no, School Board Member Truman.
I was just going to say, I'm glad we found a school psychologist.
Absolutely. All right. Seeing no one else seeking recognition, roll call vote. School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. All right. Do I have a second motion by chance? School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the stipend nomination of Mary Brown, SMS Outdoor Track, and Matt Thabarge, Summer School Coordinator, and issue a stipend contract for the 24-25 school year.
I have a motion by School Board Member Truman on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Woo! Second by School Board Member Richards. Any discussion on the motion? All righty, roll call vote. School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item B, that is resignations. There is a memo in your packet. And do I have a motion?
Chair Preble?
School Board Member Truman.
I move we accept the resignation of Elizabeth Mitchell, Fairfield second grade teacher, and Jocelyn Bowden, young school special education teacher, effective at the end of the 24-25 school year.
I have a motion by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second? Second by School Board Member Johnston. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Roll call vote. School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
All right. School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay. If I am correct, we are up to item C, which is a building update. Superintendent Ray?
I'm going to ask Meg to come up because really this kind of part of the process has been more about interior design the last couple of weeks. So I'll have Meg give you a little bit of update on that piece.
Yeah, we've had an opportunity to look at specific flooring samples above the size that's about 2 inches by 1 inch and actually start to visualize what those samples that we selected off of huge boards look like in the bigger actual tile size, and then what patterns we might like to explore. Additionally, we've looked at lockers and spent a lot of time talking about snow boots in or outside of lockers for our elementary school students. And though some discussions and items similar to the kitchen have taken longer than we might have expected those conversations to be, I'm really confident that we've had a good number of stakeholders in those conversations to really be thinking about what kids are doing in the school and how kids are using the school, and combining that with how we take care of the space in the long run, so that we're not creating solutions that leave us trying to have custodians wiping out the bottom of every single locker in the winter, or else have it be a mess. So we've come up with some boot solutions and other things that we think will both work for students and teachers, but also create maintenance plans that will leave our buildings looking really nice for an extended long haul and not just right when they open. Had an opportunity to meet with our PE teachers today and look at the 3 different gym spaces: the multipurpose room in the primary school, the multipurpose gym adjacent room or second gym in the elementary school, and then the main gym, going all the way down to where those padded walls need to be to keep kids safe, and also talking about which lines would take priority and how basketball hoops would be raised and lowered, et cetera. So had an opportunity to kind of have our architects in the same room as those practitioners that are working with students, so that as we look to those details of design, we're not necessarily finalized with all of those yet, but we know what the different considerations are that we'll need to design around. And then in conjunction to that, we've had some other planning meetings, both around intersection design as well as site work, and submitting different aspects of that with the different organizations involved: Department of Environmental Protection, wastewater treatment, working closely with Don Roth to help make sure that we're dotting all those I's and crossing all those T's with respect to different permits that we'll be continuing to submit. Okay.
All right, is there any questions for Assistant Superintendent around building updates? School Board Member Roach.
Not necessarily what you were just talking about, but you mentioned the DEP. So there's a public meeting tomorrow?
Yep, public meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at Saco Middle School.
But that's per DEP rules, is that right?
Correct. It's a required pre-application meeting, mostly around site setup.
Is it directed to, not necessarily, it's directed to the public, anyone wants to go, but it's directed for the neighbors, is it, or?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's around the, I think, 342 draft application to the state around environmental, wastewater, all with respect to the overall site work that needs to happen as a first stage. So but some of it is also post-construction related to like waste disposal and sewer and that sort of thing.
And how does, any update with the Army Corps and the Millbrook Road entrance?
I think we're going to be okay on that one. We've been communicating with the Army Corps, and it's hard because certainly when they say something to us, the technical information, Meg and I glaze over a little bit, and then we call Jonah and those pieces. But we had a good conversation with their lead the other day, and it seemed positive.
Full disclosure for the public, I am an abutter, a business abutter. So I want to make sure, I'm good, we have stormwater runoff issues over at that complex. I'm just one of the owners there, not the whole complex, but I want to make sure that's cool with my city and everything, so, but yeah, full disclosure, I just want to make sure that's cool.
I do know that a lot of what needs to be considered is not just the impacts that are occurring at that site, but also properties within a much larger catchment area, including like square feet of different wetlands that have been mitigated over time, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is taken into account through that application process.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the next item. Item D, budget and information. Superintendent Ray.
All right, so going to skip around a little bit within this category because health insurance information is updated since I put the agenda together, and we're going to talk about the impacts of that. So during the month of March, I feel like my life is nothing more than money, and budgets all the time. And so the first piece is that when we look at the combined financials that we have at our current state, we're at like a 1.1% increase city and school, which I think we joked about last time. It's like, that's really good news. Let's hope that we can stay in that realm, but we know that we were anticipating our health insurance coming in. And so our health insurance increase came in at 13.5%, which is 3.5% higher than what we had budgeted at 10%, which gives us that we need to come up with an additional $260,000 in the budget. That's an add. Now, at this point in time, I think where things have gone very well, and again, this, we've had this information for a day or so, wanted to try to figure out a way of how do we do this without, impacting current staff, changing the tax expectations, and then also accomplishing some other goals based off meetings I've had with Mike Garrity in conversations with Meg. So when you start out at that piece, trying to think about what could be some options to bridge the gap of $260,000. And the first piece is that we were meeting with Maine Housing, and we continue to see that many of the families from the hotel are moving, and they've kind of said to us there's not going to be a start of the hotel will probably not be in existence for that service at the start of the school year. And we've kind of talked to them about all the challenges it brings, that if it's housing for families and that's done in August or September, that really puts kids and families in tough spaces of choosing. So we have another meeting with Maine Housing. Chris is meeting with them over vacation, and then we're meeting with them when we come back from vacation. And one of my first, possible recommendations would be, in the budget, we have 1.5 teachers and 3 ELL ed techs as new positions. And one option that we would have would be reducing the half-time ELL teacher. This unfilled, these are new unfilled positions, and 2 of the ed techs, leaving an addition of 1 teacher and 1 ed tech in our budget. That's $53,000 and $89,000 combined. So if we did that, then I would turn our attention to looking at the fund balance that we have. And currently, today, we sit on $2.7 million worth of fund balance that we've, over the last 3 years, put into our reserve accounts. And we plan to allocate $450,000. I typed 28, and that should be 26, typo on that budget. And then I was in discussions with Don Roth this week, And just looking at the doors at the middle schools and other pieces, we were looking about, is there a way to increase our capital budget without passing things on, because we're making so many gains at Saco Middle School and timing, and, you know, one project dovetails to another project, and he understands the goal of trying to make sure that before we get into the new elementary schools, that we replace the last portable that's at Saco Middle School, and trying to put a game plan together. He also is slightly concerned about a couple of issues, burns with the heating systems. And, we do have to keep that going for the next several years. And he felt like if there was a way that we could put a little bit more capital money out of our reserve account into the budget, now that he's really starting to understand the school department and things are going really well, that was something that he asked me to consider. And then additionally, you've heard us talk about the audio enhancement system that we would be putting in the elementary schools with the speakers in the classroom, and the benefits that could we started some trial classrooms at our middle school, and the benefits it would have for our students around translation, safety, and some of those pieces that Meg could speak more of, and how we could do certain things. So I started looking a little bit at our fund balance, knowing that in our current revenue system, we have $450,000 from our current $2.7 million available for us. And then we look at additional fund balance based on insurance increases that I would recommend taking another $117,000. Nothing too scary at this point. Don't love using fund balance for recurring expenses, but in this situation, I don't think $100,000 is going to hurt us. And then looking at Dawn's capital improvement requests, and then half of the audio enhancement improvements and some cabling work, we could still be in a position that, not even counting what we end the year with this year, if we increased those revenues in, we still would have $1.8 million left. What I would like to say on that piece is that, we feel pretty decent about still having $1.8 million. Now, on the positive side, if you go back to this current year's budget, we know that we budgeted for $400,000 in main care revenue. Abby and I have been texting this evening, and a week or so ago I'd said we were over $750,000, and now we have billed over $800,000 this year. And I sent her the little emoji of Dr. Evil and the $1 million, and I said, is that even possible? And she's like, yeah, we're kind of on pace to get there, if things go well. So not promising anything, but we are definitely going to be revenue high in that line, which will increase our carryover again. And so, kind of looking at the things that we have on the table, I spoke with John today, at city manager, and said my goal was to present something to the school committee tonight that didn't change the calculations that they've done, but to operate within our revenue and any reductions that we needed, and go from that situation. So I've outlined that in the memo. Apologize that, it was late, but we were still crunching numbers right up until the end. And so I think we'd like to open it up for discussion so that when we come back on the 30th, I can have a correct revenue sheet for you guys, and a cover sheet to vote on and accept that budget. Because overall, it's still in very good shape and should be able to move this forward. And I don't feel like there's too many risks in using some of those carryover funds, especially for one-time costs.
Any questions for Superintendent Ray? School Board Member Kidder?
About the positions that you recommend eliminating, I understand they're not filled right now, but even without the hotel students, is there a need for those to be filled next year?
Well, I think that's the hard part. I think that's one full-time teacher and one ed tech would definitely help our situation. Trying to predict where we're going to be in the fall is a bit challenging right now. Certainly housing availability is one of the pieces. I know that several of the families that are moving have been moving out of town, but right now, because of the homeless situation, they're still in Saco. Old Orchard's picking up some. It's definitely picking up a few of the families in Biddeford. But it's housing availability is the single most driving factor on this, and I don't believe there's a lot of apartments coming on right now that I can see from a construction side of things. Boy, it'd be nice to be able to tuck them away a little bit differently and maybe not hire those, but trying to stay within those pieces, and that seemed like the best approach right now.
Sorry, I may have worded my question weirdly, but I meant like even if all of, I think, how many students is it? Did you say 40, or is it more than that?
Well, sorry, can you speak in the mic? I just
Sorry,
can't.
well, even without the hotel, like say all of them do move, is there still a need in the schools regardless?
There's definitely a need for another 1 and 1.
But that would be sufficient?
I think that we could make do with that, but I think our ratios are a little higher than they should be right now. But it's been it was like with this year, it was so difficult because we had so much after October 1 that students that moved in that, I mean, April went in a couple of weeks where it just like ballooned. So I do think that would help us, but it's so unpredictable about what that number would be. The other piece is that we got some information about just the number of asylee seekers coming into the state of Maine. And like at this point of the year, Meg, remember it was like 12 was the number versus last year at this time it was like 400 families. And so that's a big change as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Superintendent Ray? School Board Member Roach?
I didn't raise my.
I assumed with the mic turning on.
Okay. To follow up April's point there, so I would default to maximizing, personnel in that area to keep, regardless of the hotel situation. I know this is all fresh, so I'm not saying any decision now, but yeah, if we could offset as much as we can with an increase to the main care revenue, and the Kevin of 7 years ago is whacking me in the back of the head right now, but because we did budget way back when $1 million in revenue, so, but if you're coming in at 800 and we're only, I know the state government situation, federal too, that's a wild card, but I think we can, if we budget the revenue higher while budgeting for those positions, we don't have to hire those positions if it really comes down to we don't need them. But I just would err on the side of caution to have as many personnel in front of the kids as we can.
So I think essentially, Kevin, what we could do in that scenario is you could take $140,000, which is those 2 positions. You could run that through carryover. We could put that into a contingency line so that it wasn't touched without board approval based off the numbers in the fall. And then if you don't use the money, that means the revenue just would be carryover again. And that may be one simple solution. And I think that way it also gives like the member of the public's like saying, well, okay, they're not just going to spend it. They've got it in a place where it's controlled, right. And we've got to come back and ask for permission to hire those positions.
Okay. My only other question with the health insurance is, kind of like an understandable breakout for the board of, you know, if 3.5% increase extra costs us 240, you know, I'd like to see some backup of, you know, what our single employee rate is, the mix, the family rate. It's like 10 grand for a single and 30 grand for family, or?
So I was working on that with, I'm just gonna go to my cell phone because I was, Eileen King at Superintendent's Association was texting me today while they were in,
Yeah, I totally understand, we can wait for the April 30th, I just,
but it's,
Put it out
I
there.
have the information, because I actually texted it to her, that when you look at a health insurance cost, and again, I'm talking full cost, not a share of employee in school, a family plan on Choice Plus next year is $37,435. And then when you go to a single plan at Choice Plus, you're $13,646. So the challenging part about, like, you think about that and that family plan, and you take another 10% next year, you're now into the four. We're getting to a point where it's not too many cycles away of 10% increases, where we know the minimum state salary for a new teacher, even though that's not here in Saco, because we haven't negotiated up, but the minimum state salary for a teacher is still going to be set at $40,000, and a full family health insurance is going to eclipse that. I mean, that's crazy. And they did add some different plans again, but I have in a chart somewhere that I was looking at like 13 years ago when I became superintendent, and that family plan at that time was about $19,000 full cost. And so you've essentially doubled on that. The other piece that makes it challenging is that with this increase, what's difficult for me is that I sit there and I think of a price and I send out $37,000 to you guys on a family plan, right? This is the first year where Saco's insurance will actually cost me more than what Biddeford insurance is, because with their 3.5% increase this year, and looking at the plan, they're at like $34,000. And so you have that change between communities side by side, and boy, it's worrisome to think about what that cost is long term, because in another 5 years and another $15,000, now you're at $50,000. It's unsustainable. So I think, one of the pieces that's important for us to, the work that we've got to do over the next few days, next week, to try to get that agenda somewhat done before vacation starts, and even though we're after that week, just getting a little bit of direction of, I kind of look around and see people saying, okay, if I was reading the room, it would mess with add some revenue and put some things in contingency. Is that where we are? I just want to be able to come back on the 30th with something that is going to be what you guys want to see.
So, any other discussions for Superintendent Ray around budget? Or thoughts around what he's proposing?
Chair Preble.
School Board Member Truman?
I like the idea of putting that particular position in contingency so that it's there. If for some reason the unexpected happens and we get 40 new families that move in and we need that, then we have it it's available, but we don't have to use it if we don't need to. So, but I think you're up against the giant hill or mountain or whatever you want to call the health insurance industry that's just raking everybody over the coals in their cost increases. So I commend you for playing this game and updating us all the time on what you think it's going to be and what they're, they're saying anywhere, like that was the biggest gap I think we've seen, and then for it to go up 17, almost 18% this year, and we came out relatively okay and 13.5 and not 18%, because I was dreading you messaging us to say, guess what, we hit the jackpot and it's 8% more we have to find.
Yeah.
I was gonna not be very, so I think what you've done here is great. I know it's not the same story across the river, and there's only so much, I mean, you're working with what you've got, and playing with numbers that are anybody's guess every single year, and trying to budget with that is insane, in my opinion. But
And I'd say just as we also talk about expenditure and monies and things coming in, I didn't get an opportunity to talk to Chris today, but I'm going to ask him tomorrow the same direction that I had asked technology director in Bedford this afternoon, is that I want to be able to line up any of our planned purchases for next year on technology equipment, because as I look at the tariff situation and seeing that that's 20% more, there would be a reason why we as a board would vote and possibly bring that to the city council to spend, let's say you're making a $400,000 purchase, okay? Well, if you had 20% on top of that and you're looking at that being 480, there may be some, maybe that's a good reason to say, hey, let's go to a city council meeting and ask that we order this stuff now that we were going to be ordering on July 1 and avoid tariffs. I mean, that's real money.
All right. Any other questions for Superintendent Ray? Jeff?
We don't get to see a lot of sort of teacher-facing stuff, so I'm sure we participate in wellness programs and so forth to help kind of buy down our health insurance costs as much as possible, but just curious.
So they have those wellness programs through the main benefit, the trust. It's changed, the app's changed a couple of times in the last couple of years. I think the question is, and I know that Mr. McCurry in Biddeford really was kind of poking at us that, like, when I sent out that email to you guys that explained the increases, and they talked about $28 million used of like refund to buy down the rate. And his conversation is like, so they were sitting on $28 million of taxpayer money that they were interest on versus, like taxing the entire state because of their rates. I don't think the programs are strong enough. And I think they're challenging for districts to manage through because, you're coming up with a lot of the benefits. I know that there are some through the app that people have to join and be part of. I actually felt like the changing of the app every year or a different program was kind of the biggest deterrent because you were kind of getting used to something and using it, had it hooked to your phone, your watch, and then now it's something new. Not enough of it, Jeff.
Just curious if, from like a human resources standpoint, if we were kind of blast that stuff out at a particular time, if we can, I don't know, make a goal to do what we can anyways,
Yeah, we can definitely think about that piece and do a little bit more from our office.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Any other items under item D, Superintendent Ray, that we wanted to review?
That pretty much covers all of that stuff because a lot of it was just information, and then I will come back with a memo and a revenue sheet to match that kind of exactly to the penny of where we're going to be and what we're going to do based off what I believe I'm understanding tonight.
All right. Moving back or moving on to item, I believe if I'm correct, E, which is social studies curriculum recommendation. Superintendent Ray or Assistant Superintendent Parkhurst. Hi.
So I have a memo attached here that just highlights some information that we've gone over in a little bit more detail at the curriculum committee level in the last several years. And I'll just try to walk you through that before identifying where we are at this point in time. In the 22-23 school year, we started our initial discussions with the 6-8 social studies team and looked at the new standards that had been released in 2020 and ensured that we had those kind of split up between grade levels when they release those standards for 6-8. They're not delineated towards each grade, so the teachers need to ensure that those are spaced out appropriately. In 23-24 last year, we started talking about the potential of resource exploration. At this point in time, there are various online resources that different teachers are pulling from, and teacher-created lesson plans that are certainly helpful in terms of creating autonomy for teachers and responding to student needs, but there was no consistent text that teachers or students were using absent a 2001 publication that was a social studies text that they would pull out from here to there, which I think you can imagine has some different reflections on historical moments, though the history may not have quote unquote changed. The way that that history is discussed, explored, presented has certainly changed over time. So at that point, we felt like it was important for the team to understand what was in the landscape for print and digital resources. We spent time looking at demonstrations from vendors and publishers that provided those, as well as an in-depth review and evaluation by the full team. The priorities that we identified were having common resources to anchor curriculum planning, but still having an alignment to the main social studies standards. There are some specialized coverage areas that are very hard, if not impossible, to find common purchased resources around, so those will remain kind of items, Maine Constitution, Wabanaki Peoples, those will remain kind of teacher-designed units. The team really wanted to make sure that there was a balance between print and digital resources, recognizing that we're on one-to-one devices, but that it is really important to have students engaging with one another and with a physical text, not just behind a screen all the time. And then also looking at a sustainable cost structure for year-over-year implementation. One of the resources that we've used in the past was News ELA or News Ella, and their cost structure has changed so much year to year in terms of what the add-ons are, what you could change, that it became hard to predict over time what those costs would be. So we started with a more in-depth exploration of 6 different resources. We used standardized criteria to look at those resources during a dedicated meeting over the summer. The top-rated resource at that time was TCI History Alive. The average rating was a 4.4 out of 5 for features of the program, and then a 4.2 out of 5 for teacher usability. Some of the strengths were very comprehensive if we wanted to use it like a new teacher coming in that didn't have a good grasp on pedagogy or scope and sequence could have the full resources right at their fingertips. But then it also has an ability to split out lessons and or print resources to just take the components that are needed. It integrates with Google Classroom, which is a platform that our teachers are already using. There are differentiation options. Again, some of the components that we looked at did not have digital and print. Some are only offering digital at this point, so that was a priority. And then there's also some engaging features, games, geography challenges, and more inquiry-based projects that align with some of our project-based teams. Some of the things that we still want to kind of keep an eye out or make sure that we're addressing when we put this resource into practice are screen time concerns and balancing that print and digital component. There are 2 text differentiation levels that are part of the resource inherently, but we will still want to be exploring other tools to explain or scaffold complex language for our students that may be well below that or ready for more complex text structures. And then lastly, that initial investment cost when you're talking about buying physical books is a challenge. The titles for grade level alignment that align best with that standards work that we did in splitting the standards from the main learning results are Ancient World for our 6th grade class, our 7th grade looking at United States through industrialism, and 8th grade looking at United States through modern times. I also want to acknowledge that for 7th and 8th grade, it's not just the US history component of it, but it does get into involvement in European wars and World War I and World War II, et cetera. So it's not just focused on the United States, but it is using a lens of US involvement in those time periods. The cost structures that we were able to look at, kind of going from the lowest initial investment to the highest, is a 1-year agreement that would give us teacher digital editions, but no student digital editions, and then 25 student sets per grade, per classroom, which equates to 75 per grade level with our 3 social studies teachers. So that initial agreement for 1 year would be $23,521.75, and we would be looking at about $8,000 a year to re-up the teacher licenses on an annual basis. When we look at a 3-year agreement, it kind of makes sense through bundling. You add those online licenses for all 600 students, and that brings the 3-year agreement price up to just over $49,000, which then, of course, you don't have a recurring cost in year 2 and year 3. That's the full cost. And then a 6-year agreement puts you at $60,700, and that's the same as the 3-year agreement in terms of what you're getting. You're just committing for 6 years. We do have the funds in the FY25 budget and currently earmarked in the FY26 budget to be able to split that 6-year agreement across FY25 and FY26, and the organization will do that for us as long as we split the resources between what we order prior to July 1 versus what we order after July 1. The curriculum committee, after some discussion, felt like the 6-year agreement would be the best recommendation, given that those funds are already in the 25 budget and currently allocated in the 26 budget, and that would allow us to kind of commit to see this through with our social studies department and also provide a predictable cost structure that would allow us to kind of know what we were committing to for at least 6 years. If there is a recommendation moving forward, we'll look to then finalize that purchase, schedule professional development for staff, including summer training and then online ongoing options throughout the course of the school year. We're also concurrently looking at 5th grade. We have 2 different pilots going for our 5th grade social studies teachers, one that is really solely geography and another one that's a little bit more inquiry-based but includes some geography components. So we're going to need to continue to coordinate what's being covered in 5th grade and how that dovetails with our middle school curriculum. And then we'll look to develop that implementation timeline as well as continue to ensure that we have those customized units for main specific content that is not covered as in-depth in some of those kind of more universal resources. I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
School Board Member Richards?
Curriculum that's like this, that's designed to be somewhat easier to implement. You had mentioned just a kind of someone could come in that hadn't worked here before and kind of pick it up easy. Is there any savings that could be had from, teaching people how to use it from a training standpoint with curriculum like this, or?
So are you referring to savings by having teachers create their own resources versus a kind of an option that is plug and play, or are you referring to training over time for teachers to use this effectively?
More like at ease of training teachers, how to use it effectively. I was just curious. I didn't really,
I wouldn't say there's necessarily a cost savings over time, but I do think both through our instructional coaching model that we have that's like content agnostic at the middle school, and through the initial picking out of the resource, you're trying to keep an eye on what the most, balance the student experience with what the most teacher-friendly experience is, and make sure that we're not losing either one of those in the resource that we select. And I do also just want to be clear that, which is a philosophy I agree with, the middle school is not interested in kind of it's day 27 and everybody's going to read the same script on day 27. That can be an option with a resource like that, but we still believe in hiring teachers that are highly qualified and highly skilled to make really strong decisions about the students in front of them and the resources that they have, and marrying those two things to make that work. So we're not looking at this as an implementation expectation where we're expecting like fidelity to a program. It's going to be continued ongoing conversations about like this unit and these resources work really well. I'm adding this unit in here and pulling resources from New York Times, New York Post, this other main Constitution website that the legislature puts forward, right? So we're not just burying our heads in this and only using this. It's important that with their content knowledge, we honor that as well.
Any other questions? School Board Member Roach?
So I looked this up, the TCI, and it's got a section called Civics Alive. So this is not an indictment of Saco or Maine or whatever, but the civics education in this country is brutal. All right, so agreeing to implement this, I really stress that civics become a much bigger deal, and whether that's tested or revisited. Like, I would like, if it's whatever grade it's fully introduced in middle school, that the high school, Thornton, there's a loop back system on this particular, because, not to get on a soapbox here, but this country's in idiot crisis right now of how government actually works. And I was called this weekend, not directly, but it was an online debate this weekend of like somehow we on the school board are the ruling class. I mean, it's ridiculous. But this was someone who's a business owner that was educated in the local school systems, and with all this agreement too, and not understanding how votes come to be for school budgets and city council and levels of government, not just basic things of like understanding how many senators are per state, but I just think in general, and not to pick on our own middle school or Thornton or whatever, but and I've been through the process, and I talked to graduates recent of our schools, and it's just amazing how much they don't know. They just don't know. And we just got to, just like math and reading and writing, civics needs to be a priority. So I hope this curriculum, while not limiting teachers to what they can do on a day-by-day basis, but still make sure that the students understand what's in the curriculum and what civics is all about here.
Can I,
Thank you.
real quick, I had the same question for Meg during curriculum committee.
Oh, okay.
And it was discussed that it's more of a high school level, I believe, that was kind of what they were leaving it up to.
And I will say one of the other benefits, as you said, there's like, I think there's 6 titles available that you can kind of pick and choose, and we picked the 3 that we thought fit best. But one of the benefits of the teacher online access is that teachers can still access the resources for all 6 components. So the 8th grade was very torn between Civics Alive or United States Through Modern Times, and felt like, okay, well, as long as we can use some of the online resources for Civics Alive. And certainly we are not kind of done here. We still have work to do in articulating that scope and sequence and sharing that with the curriculum committee. Sorry.
No, that's kind of, I just wanted to make sure that he knew that we had had this conversation about, because I was like, maybe civics should be like 101 for us, but I also just wanted to say too that kind of within the same line, out of all the ones that we had originally discussed when you guys were first vetting all of these programs, this is the one that actually stuck in my mind that I liked the most, and it seemed like the most user-friendly, and it looked appealing. And we did all agree that the 6-year agreement be the way to go, because it gets, staff will invest in it. If it's not just like a one-off and like, we're going to just check and see how it goes, they may not. And I also like that, I know that the middle school has incorporated a lot with Google Classroom. I do know that I'm speaking from experience, that there were some very poor quality photocopies that came home occasionally, and you're like, I think this is Mesopotamia, but I'm not sure. So this is great to see that we'll have some new materials to use. No textbooks from 2001 referencing how the internet might become a very popular thing at some point. True story. But yeah, I did have the same concerns, but it's nice to hear that the 8th graders, not the 8th graders per se, but the 8th grade team were interested in also stealing from the Civics Alive piece and incorporating that in their
and
curriculum.
You're also correct. We did coordinate and consult with TA and their social studies department, and they have a scope and sequence change that they're phasing in that moves from having a U.S. history course, I think it's like generally in 11th grade, instead of having that 11th grade U.S. history course, they're splitting it into 2 semester-long courses, one that's focused on economics and personal finance, and one that's focused on civics. So I do think that we are working to try to be in consultation and conjunction with how we want that to look on a bigger picture as best we can.
Sorry. No, for that, once you get to 11th grade though, people, kids' interests, maybe tune out on that. And some of this just got to be just embedded in earlier years. Some of us grew up on, this is before middle school years, we grew up on like Schoolhouse Rock, right? And, we got to know how a bill was made. And you mentioned conjunction there. I almost sang the song for you. So.
Conjunction function.
Yeah, so. But that it gets just ingrained in today's society on the internet. It's like you're finding your own interests versus watching like the same cartoon, say on Saturday morning, and hearing the same stuff on, say, TV or learning things from the news or whatever. So it's just puts more pressure on schools to just try to say, well, this is how it is. There's no opinion here. This is how government's set up. This is how we elect. This is what's going on locally. And I'm not saying it is high school that it should be, probably as they enter into adulthood to know these issues, but by 11th grade it could be too late in terms of some basic background information. So
I was going to say, as a parent, also trying to make those topics fun for your own kids is a very challenging endeavor. So I don't think it matters what age they are. I think maybe the 11th grade, we can get into the weeds on this, but I think by 11th grade, just so you know, you're going to be voting next year, so maybe you want to pay attention.
right.
But at any rate, I think that this is going to be a great program, and I'm really happy to see that there's some streamlining happening over at the middle school as far as social studies goes, and I'm excited to see how the rest of the staff like it once it's fully implemented. So,
School Board Member Johnston.
'em. Thank you. I just wanted to say that, I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be very careful. I think, you know, we have to be this seemed to rise to the top for those who were doing the research and into what program we might be using. And it seems to be the most versatile, have a lot of qualities and attributes that maybe a lot of the other programs didn't. One of them, as Meg pointed out, is that there are different ways to access the information. It's not all in print, it's not all online. And I think that it's a good basis for us to go forward. So just based on what we in the curriculum committee heard, it seems to be the best option for us now. And I think we felt that instead of going into it sort of part of the way, we thought it might make sense to commit to it for a certain length of time, and so that hopefully everybody would try to really get invested in making it work for our students. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? School Board Member Truman?
Just a quick comment on the geography piece over at the 5th grade. Someone I know is in that pilot and lives on the app to name all the countries, and is currently in Africa and is quite proud of himself and only has one more section to go. So I'm happy that they're learning more about the geography piece in the 5th grade level more in the coming years. I used to love looking at maps. It was my favorite.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you so much. I am wondering if there is a motion.
I'll make it.
Okay. School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the use of the TCI, I move we approve the use of TCI for the Saco Middle School Social Studies curriculum starting for the 25-26 school year.
I have a motion by School Board Member Truman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Johnston. Any other discussion on the topic of the motion? All right. Moving on to roll call vote. School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. All right. Fantastic. Moving on to item F, federal funding update. Superintendent Ray?
Okay, this is not necessarily well, it is, but it isn't, federal funding update. Kind of what we've decided to do is that this memo, you will continue to see updated probably every board meeting with some of the new challenges that face schools or navigating of different orders and or policies and or changes. And we were trying to think about like, okay, we can write a memo every single time. But then when I was in Dayton the other night, they were like, what if we use the same memo and just put a new date every time something changed for you guys? I was like, that's a pretty good idea. We can do that a lot easier. So a couple of different things that, do and don't affect us. First one is there was an executive order that stopped any of the late liquidation of ESSER funds, which there was $17.1 million in the state still being used. We are lucky we did not fall into that category. Doesn't impact us. You saw a presentation from Principal Susi about the bar initiative a couple of weeks ago, and all of the money at the state level was pulled for the bar initiative. A lot of the good work that we've done will continue on, but the support for that is being pulled. We lost regulated classroom training that was budgeted for our staff. That funding was kind of pulled away from us. I had a conversation with the commissioner the other day, and while we haven't lost any funding in the food program piece yet, It does sound like there is going to be some effect on the administration and the software being used at the DOE level, because at one point accounts were locked. So there's a lot coming at school officials, and we're just going to kind of keep a running total or a running tab of everything that's happening. You know, some good news that did come last week, and we're taking it as good news, is that the performance reports that we do at the end of the year for all Title I expenditures was magically, jump up and say it, Meg.
Unfortunately, I still have to do title reporting as far as I
Okay.
know, but they notified us of an ESSER performance report that usually when you apply for a grant, it's nice to know how you're going to have to report out on that grant. That hasn't been the case for ESSER, so they provided us with a 38-page grant report that they wanted done by May 1st, but then they rescinded the requirement to complete that at all, so I was not sad to put that 38-page document in the recycling bin.
And I told them to hold on to it, because you never know when things get reversed. And so that's just the world we're living in. And so we're just going to keep these going, because I think it's important for everybody to understand it's a changing landscape, and we're just trying to communicate the best we can in and out of the office to figure out what we should do and should not do, while keeping you guys informed. And that's where I thought the great idea of the Dayton board to say, hey, could you just run this one and add new dates, so that they only had one place to look and they could remember back. So that's what we've decided we're going to try to keep doing.
Okay. Any questions for Superintendent Ray? All right. Seeing nobody seeking recognition on that item, we can move on to second readings of policies. Item A is KB, parental involvement in education. Item B is KCB, public gifts/donations to public schools. Item C is KE, public concerns and complaints. Item D is KGA, relations with educational foundations. Item E is KDB, public rights to know, freedom of access. Item F is KEB, complaints about school personnel. Do I have a motion? School Board Member Johnston.
Thank you. I move we approve the second reading of policies KB, KCD, KE, KGA, KDB, and KEB.
Second.
I have a motion by School Board Member Johnston with a second by School Board Member Truman. Do I have any discussion on the policies? All right. Seeing no one seeking recognition, roll call vote. School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. All right, moving on to item 13, other information. I was not made, I stand corrected.
Just, and I want to say this because we just mentioned it at the other meeting. For a certain part of town, right by the river, morning traffic's pretty rough. And that area around Bob's and Mike's is pretty jam-packed. And when you're the superintendent just trying to get to your office and that's your route to go, it's about 20 minutes to go one way. I learned from Marty today that over the next couple of days, as that kind of loop through the town starts, they're going to kind of shut down the actual construction project. So if you see why are things closed but there's no digging going on, it's because they're trying to synchronize all and make sure the timing of traffic flow works a little bit. So just important for people who are traveling along that route or need to get somewhere, or even thinking about the bus that goes from TA to COT, that is an issue right now. So just trying to remind people to know that's going on, because it definitely will impact time getting to school, plan for those pieces. Seemed like this morning on my commute in of trying to sneak around and go down Saco Main Street, that definitely was way more congested this morning. So just try to plan for those things because that's going to be from now until
November.
November.
Yeah.
School Board Member Johnston?
Thank you. I just want to say that as somebody who lives right in that area, yeah, it's definitely been problematic, and I'd like to think that it won't be in the future, but I know better, so I would agree with the superintendent that you need to plan ahead. Thank you.
Just don't go south. Just don't go south, that's all. Don't go south.
There's always the turnpike, you know. Just saying. Any other questions for Superintendent Ray? All right, be aware of traffic. Moving on to item 14, executive session. There was none scheduled for this evening. So I am moving on to item 15, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by School Board Member Truman. Do I have a second or a altogether?
Second.
Oh, seconded by School Board Member Richards. And I'm assuming no discussion, so roll call vote. School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Roach.
The dire wolf never left. Yes.
And School Board Member Kidder.
Yes.
It's hard to follow up from that, I know. School Board Member Truman.
I'm going to keep my answer simple. Yes.
All right. School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
All righty. Motion passes 6-0 to adjourn at, oh, come on, what? 8:12 p.m. Thank you and have a great night.